Hello again, class. In our investigations of the properties of matter, we're going to be considering the extensive and intensive properties that would make a spoon useful for an eating tool, and what additional properties an edible spoon would have. So remember, we're considering the word properties. That means the qualities in substances or materials that make it act in a certain way. And today we'll also be considering what mixtures are, which are combinations of substances that are not chemically combined. So edible spoons are healthy, nutritious, eco-friendly alternatives to practice. We're going to consider extensive and intensive properties. Extensive properties depend on the amount of a substance present, like volume, mass, how the weight of a substance. An intensive property does not depend on the amount of the substance, like density, malleability, brittleness, the color. These quantities of a substance have the same values of the intensive property, no matter how much you have. If you immerse so consider these Diet Cola and the regular cola. Each have different amounts of sugar. Okay, so if we immerse them both in water, you'll notice the regular cola sinks and the Diet Cola floats. But they're both the same volume. They both have 12 ounces. The sweetener in Diet Cola is hundreds of times sweeter per unit volume than the sugar in regular cola. So a much smaller mass of sweetener is needed in the Diet Cola to produce the amount of sweetness that sugar produces in regular cola. So, what are the extensive and intensive properties described in this experiment? What properties are extensive and depend on the amounts? What properties are intensive and do not depend on the amounts? Remember, we said both cans have the same volume, but somehow the sweetener is hundreds of times sweeter. If you changed the experiment so you had 7.5 ounce cans, you had smaller cans instead of 12-ounce cans, what properties would change and which ones would stay the same? Would the mass change? Would the volumes of the sodas change? Would the density of the soda itself change? Would the sweetness of the soda change? Which of those properties depend on the amount of soda you have? Let's classify each observation of matter as an intensive or an extensive property. So if there's a pot of boiling water that has more energy than a cup of boiling water, the pot of boiling water is more water, so we say that's an extensive property. A pot of water boils at the same temperature as a cup of water. The temperature does not depend on how much water you have, so it's intensive. Copper wire conducts electricity. Is that intensive or extensive? No matter what length of copper wire you have, it will conduct electricity the same way. A block of ice takes longer to melt than it does a small ice cube. A bigger size ice cube is longer to melt. It depends how much you have.